Railway Conversations with Doc Frank.
Hello, this is Doc Frank, host of the Railway Conversations podcast. My guest today is Lena Harnisch from Braunschweig in Germany. She's an expert on the field of cybersecurity, and unsurprisingly, this is what we are going to talk about in today's podcast episode. Cybersecurity is a very hot topic. It's very trendy and it's increasingly important for the entire railway industry. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and you take a lot of interesting insights from it. Hi, it's Doc Frank here. Real quick, I want to let you know about one of the best CBTC trainings in the world, if not the very best, but you always need to be careful with superlatives. It's the CBTC Kickstarter online course. It consists of 30 video lessons. That's the 3 with the 0. In total, over 11 hours of training content, talking about everything from the basics of CBTC, current standards, the benefits of CBTC, the key functionality of it, the supply industry, application tips and tricks, lessons learned, do's and don'ts, case studies, arguably the most comprehensive training that you can find anywhere on the topic of CBTC. There are a few additional things that make learning easier for you that you may not find on any other online courses. One of them being an immersion plan that helps guiding you through the training course and progress it in a finite period of time instead of just having it sit there for months and months on end. There is access to an online study group where you can connect with other students who are doing that training course at the time and form learning groups. There will be live coaching calls once every 2 weeks. And after the training, you will not be on your own. There is an alumni community that allows you to ask questions about the course content on an ongoing basis. So it's basically education for life. You can inform yourself about this training course and register to it on my training portal, which is docfranktraining.podia.com/CBTC Kickstarter -online 2023. I repeat that, docfranktraining.podia.com/CBTC Kickstarter -online 2023. I look forward to seeing you at that training. And until then, please enjoy my upcoming episode of this podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You work in an area which is quite specialized, but also very topical at the moment and of great interest for many railway organizations, more and more so, which is cybersecurity. Now, if somebody does a career in railways, cybersecurity is certainly not the very first topic that you would think of working in. Can you tell us just for a short while how you got into this industry and specifically into this field of cybersecurity, please?
Yeah, so my path probably isn't the most traditional one. I actually studied mechanical engineering for aircraft systems, but then ended up with Siemens because they have what people don't realize is the whole mobility business unit for signaling and rolling stock. And I started with doing system management for the Wi-Fi communication system and then ended up in different positions along the way. The most fun was in the Crossrail project in London, where I was interfacing a lot with the cybersecurity specialists. And then through that contact and learning more about it, I ended up in this position right now. So I'm a product manager for the cybersecurity solutions for mass transit.
Excellent. Well, it just goes to show that careers in railways can be quite flexible and quite variable. Mm-hmm. And when I started off at Siemens, that was like 100 years ago. It feels like in 91. I had no idea that I would stay in that industry for so long, and I would stay with Siemens for, I think, 17 and a half years or something like that. Quite an amazing time. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in Braunschweig, where you are located now. So I know the place still quite well, and I think a lot of people know me over there as well.
So talking about cybersecurity, I think that's of great interest for anybody listening to the show. And predominantly, it's not just related to signaling. So in the past, I've been criticized a bit that this should be called signaling conversations, not railway conversations, because I keep talking about signaling a lot of the time with my guests. But in this case, it's basically just cybersecurity in a wider sense. So for those who have no idea what this is, and I kind of count myself into that category, what is cybersecurity and why is it important?
Right. So to answer that question, we need to look at terminology first. So there are a lot of different words that are being used when we talk about cybersecurity. There's information security, IT security, cybersecurity, OT security, and so on and so on and so on. So if you Google the definitions, it can get a little bit confusing. And if you have different languages, like in German, for example, the word is used for both safety and security, it gets even more confusing. So just to start, we need to look at what it actually means in the application sense. So we have, if we just say cybersecurity in a general term, we have cybersecurity in terms that relate to your daily work, your emails, phishing attempts, your password security, and so on. And then cybersecurity for the actual application for our signaling systems and communication systems. So in the past, where we had signaling systems in a closed environment, without any interface to the outside world, it wasn't that much of an importance, but now everything is interconnected, everything is more digitalized, and we have lots more interfaces to the outside world, the bad outside world, and we need to secure the system. So that's where me and my team come in place for making sure that we have the correct products, the correct design, the correct processes, the testing, everything in place to make it secure. And secure against who? Against hackers, against malicious entities. There are different levels of type of attackers that we need to consider. But also sometimes that we don't think about is like the accidental attack. So someone who actually doesn't mean to do anything bad, just who's curious, who wants to see what happens if I, log in here, if I do this, things like that to also protect against.
Yeah, I think this some people who work in that hacking, should I call it, industry, or that are basically busy as hackers, they're almost treated like a sport, whether they are able to hack certain sites or not. And I think a train system or a system that controls trains is probably quite attractive for hackers. It's almost like having your own little model railway, only that the trains are in a scale 1-to-1. That's the real thing, right? So I could imagine that playing around with the signaling system is quite attractive for hackers. And then I just remembered a book that I once read in the year 1999 or so, and it was about this Y2K event where a group of hackers started to take over New York, and they basically focused on 4 systems, and the railway system, the underground system, subway in New York, was one of those 4 systems. The other one were obviously electricity, water supply, and can't remember what the 4th one was, and probably telecoms or something like that. But the railway system was definitely one of the key systems if you want to control a city that you need to take hold of. So many people say cybersecurity, and you already kind of hinted that the more the railway become digitalized, the bigger is the threat, because the more interfaces you have to the outside world, and every interface to the outside world that's connected to the World Wide Web can basically be accessed through the World Wide Web. And if your protection systems are not strong enough, then people can get into the systems that are not supposed to get into the systems. Still, I could imagine that many in the railways still think, well, this is not for us. The railways will be safe, and nobody will be interested. Like, why should hackers go into railways when they can go into banking systems instead, where there's money to be earned? So can you talk about a few incidents which can hopefully convince people that railways can be targets for cyber attacks?
Yeah, so the most famous incident, I think, or famous in the bad sense, is the 2017 WannaCry ransomware attack on Deutsche Bahn in Germany, where it was very public because the attackers were able to hack the passenger information system as well. So everywhere on each platform where the displays were usually showing the departure time of a train, there was now a weird screen saying, please transfer cryptocurrency to somewhere. So I don't know the details, but it was very public. And also ransomware basically means that the victim, so in this case, the operator, was required to basically pay for the attacker to release the system. So that's something that one is a financial burden. It's a public image issue as well, because it was again on each passenger information display. So that was a big incident. My personal favorite actually is a bit smaller. Was in 2008 in Poland, where a teenager was curious, was very smart, and was able to hijack a tram and eventually actually derail it, and people got injured. So it was really bad. But it just shows that it's not just grown-ups with a degree and training, but also teenagers that can technically do bad things if the system is not sufficiently protected.
Yeah, I think the issue with that ransomware is probably that you never quite know once you're really safe. Yeah, so there's basically a piece of software controlling your systems, and even if the hacker says, I released your system now, I mean, that ransomware software is still there, is still somewhere. And so I would think there's a constant concern that they may decide, well, I need another chunk of money, and then they basically reactivate that ransomware piece of software. I'm not sure. I mean, the way that I treat with virus threats here is basically through the typical antivirus programs, your McAfee and stuff like that, where you're basically just hoping that the antivirus programs stay just one step ahead, or are at least not far behind what the hackers can do, so that any new virus or so that's coming up is being detected, can be identified, and basically can be deactivated before it causes any damage. It goes to show that cybersecurity is a real thing, and it's not just something that may affect like some small instances or Mickey Mouse railways where you say, well, yeah, one tram somewhere in Poland, that was just tough luck. But I mean, Deutsche Bahn is one of the biggest rail operators in the world and one of the most reputable ones, arguably. And if they can be attacked, pretty much anyone can be attacked, or any railway organization can be attacked. So nobody can really say, oh no, we are safe. We don't do things like this. Yeah, that's so. The next question is probably what can be done about it. And you did already mention that a lot of stuff just happens almost accidentally. And from anything I heard about cybersecurity is those cautions for normal employees, like not leaving the doors open, and like not having any USB sticks left in the computer ports, or not writing your password on a piece of paper and sticking it to the top of your monitor or something like that. So is there something where you basically can advise normal people how to apply a little bit more care in their jobs with regards to cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned a few examples already. What we currently do is a lot of awareness training. So we require to have all employees, but especially project staff and also maintainers, the operators, everybody, we give them trainings. So web-based trainings that they can do just to be reminded of what not to do, or just to be cautious, use common sense, and to make sure that just the each little step contributes to the big picture. So you have, like you said, don't write down passwords, change your passwords regularly, don't share passwords, use secure passwords, use encrypted emails, make sure you only send information on a need-to-know basis. Don't use ChatGPT for business purposes. Don't share things on social media. But yeah, like you said, USB sticks. Don't let any loose hard drives or SSDs lying around in the office. You can even lock your laptop to your desk. There's these laptop locks you can use. For business travel, to use privacy screens on your screen, and yeah, bunch of very simple but effective measures you can use for your day-to-day work. And actually, a lot of them are also transferable to the operational use in your project, in your railway project. So there again, passwords is a big topic. You need to make sure that default passwords are changed, that you use secure passwords, but also make sure that they're not usable or not too complicated for an actual tester or commissioner to enter them 100 times a day. And if you need to share the passwords, same as is in your day-to-day life, to use approved tools. So there are certain password management tools that you can use to securely share them from like your development team to your commissioning team. Things like that.
Yeah. I think the awareness. I mean, one thing is you did mention training courses for your own project staff, which I assume you mean project staff working for your own company. But I could imagine maybe even more so that such kind of training would be useful for the actual end user, for the railway organizations. I remember in my early days at Siemens, funny enough, when we introduced a new operation control system for interlockings, which was mouse-based. And then we took it to the clients, and for some of the operators in the control centers, it seemed to be the first time ever that they were using a mouse. So it was incredible to see, like from the motorical standpoint, how difficult they found it to just scroll the mouse pointer to a certain position on the screen and then click the right button with the right finger, like not the like the little pinky, but the index finger to get to the right left click instead of a right click. It was unbelievable how much inertia there was for people to get this done. And I can imagine if you have basically operators or railway people who are used to non-digital technology, and now all of a sudden they are exposed to these computer-based things. And you need to choose a password and you mustn't forget it, because otherwise you can't get into the system, you can't do your job. So what Bob thinks is, Bob 2023 is a very secure password because it's a combination of a capital letter and a couple of small letters, and we've got a few digits as well. So I've got ticks everywhere, and I need a special sign. Okay, I'm clever now. I'm choosing Bob 2023. Full stop. So there's my special sign, and now I've got a very sophisticated password which ticks all the boxes. It's even eight digits long, which is supposed to be minimum length of the password. Bob 2023 and a full stop is exactly eight digits. So that's perfect. So that's my password. And by the way, Bob chooses to have the same password for every application at work, including his email, and at home, by the way, it's the same thing. So his bank account will be protected with the same password, Bob 2023 as everything else, which once a hacker is in somewhere, anywhere, in anything electronically to do with Bob, and be it something like his Facebook account, which surprisingly has the same password, now all of a sudden a hacker said, so Bob is one of these Bob guys choosing the password with first name and then the year we are in, and then some innocuous thing at the end, which is the full stop, the easiest you can imagine. Let's just see whether Bob chooses the same password for his banking account. And surprise or success or whatever you want to call it. And then the next thing is you find out, Bob's actually working for a big railway organization. let's just see what Bob's doing at this workplace. And again, you have another hit, another home run. So I could imagine that these people even need more awareness than the people already working in an environment where they work with digital systems all day long. They work on projects that deploy digital systems all day long. Do you offer training courses like this for client organizations as well?
Yes. Yeah. So that runs through our customer service organization. Yes, that's available as well.
Yeah. And I hope the uptake is good, because very often I could imagine operators say, well, additional training courses, this costs money, and I can't really afford it, and the budget of the project is fully exhausted already, and so on. So any additional training courses we can't really afford. So one can only hope that they really take this up and they really see this as something valuable, which actually helps their business in the long time. Because if that's an area that's neglected, it may be okay until it isn't. And
yep.
then they may get themselves into big trouble. So this was kind of the like what any individual can do, like basically personal awareness, if you will, and that probably already mitigates, I don't know, probably a massive percentage of possible incidents. It's like when you leave your house and you lock the door and you make sure that all your windows are closed, then you probably already defended yourself against like 80% of the possible burglaries where people just come around and check for open windows and doors. And if they can't find one, then they go to the next house and hopefully there's some open window over there. But what about the more malicious attacks where people really try, like hackers try to get in with brute force, like checking not just Bob 2023 dot, but also some more sophisticated passwords and like the professionals? How do you protect against those, which is probably the next level up of cybersecurity measures?
So it's a very methodical approach, just to make sure that we've done our due diligence and implemented everything we can to make the system secure. So first you start with the dry topics, to look at the standards which are relevant in your country that you're implementing your railway system, because each country possibly has their own sets of standards in addition to the international ones. So the big ones here are the 62443, relevant for IT security, and the newest ones was specifically for railway applications at the TS 5007. So that one actually defines railway assets and classifies them into groups of criticality, security levels, defines zones and conduits in the system. So that one's an interesting one to look at. And one aspect it also mentions is the defense in depth approach. And that's essentially what we look at when we implement measures to defend the system. So we look at all these different layers from the outside to the inside of measures to secure. So you can start with your simple things, your standards, your procedures, your trainings. You can do physical security on the outside to make sure everything is locked, only authorized people have access. And then you look at the more techie solutions like firewalls, antivirus, as you said earlier, a demilitarized zone between our actual signaling system and the outside world, which is very important. And other measures going further into the system. So secure coding, secure passwords, network segmentation. So it's a lot of looking at the different layers. This defense in depth approach is also called the onion model because it actually has layers. And then going step by step, documenting everything. One big part is the threat and risk analysis. That actually is not only a tool for starting this whole process, because you define your assets, you define the risk, and you look at what kind of measures you need to implement, which ones you can implement, because sometimes there's a limit to what you're permitted to do without affecting the system, without affecting the operability. And then also in the long term, something that's very important is vulnerability monitoring. So if you have your system set up, you have your software installed, it's the same as your computer at home. It's only as good as it is in the moment. So if you don't touch it for a year without doing any updates, without doing any virus checks and checking for updates, it might be out of date and therefore present a vulnerability to the system. So you need to make sure it's up to date. You need to check for any open source vulnerabilities that are monitored worldwide and then implement patches and update it.
There was one term you just mentioned, and I stumbled over the term when I heard it the first time, and I thought, well, that sounds rather like defense technology than railway transportation, and that's the term demilitarized zone or something like that. Can you just, for the sake of the listeners, explain what that means, and that this is not just a defense industry issues but something that's really related to cybersecurity in general, which means it's related to railways as well?
Yeah, essentially it's like a border control. So if you have your internal system with your railway applications and your external systems, your interfaces that go to the outside. So if you have your customer-facing information system, your SCADA, your master clock, or any other external interfaces, the demilitarized zone essentially consists of firewalls, specific configurations that prohibit any unwanted data coming from the outside to the inside, and the same preventing any sensitive information coming from the inside to the outside. So it's a very state-of-the-art, defined by standards. Even the BSI in Germany defines demilitarized zones for any critical infrastructure. So there again, you have also the applicability to railway because it's critical infrastructure.
Great. A very simple, straightforward explanation. I love it. Yeah, that's the kind of explanation that I like to do myself very much in my training courses. Excellent. I'm very glad I asked that question. And there was another one that piqued my curiosity in an earlier answer that you gave when you were talking about individual measures, and you mentioned ChatGPT, which I think is a pretty hot topic at the moment, where people just about starting to find out what the benefits are. They hear all these fantastic things, like YouTube is full of videos with really wonderful things that people do with ChatGPT. What's the specific issue with that you see with regards to cybersecurity? Why did you mention this in your response as be careful with that?
So I mentioned it actually because it was also internally mentioned by our Chief Information Security Officer, Natalia Oropesa, to not use it for any business purposes, because for the average user, ChatGPT is a black box. Like whatever you put in, you don't know what's happening inside, what's actually been done with your information that you insert. So if you were to use it to say, please translate this, I mean, it's similar to Google Translate, or please write a paragraph for this interface specification, or any input that you give into this black box, that information could be used by someone else, could be changed, it's confidentiality, that's the issue here. So data confidentiality, also IP, intellectual property, if there's any really sensitive information that's being inserted by someone who just is not thinking, who's not using their common sense, that could be something that's really bad. And then again, nobody knows if, like I said, that information that's in this black box could then be used by hackers, be extracted again, and used in a malicious way.
Yeah, well, yeah, IP is something that I definitely understand and can relate to, and I also see the issue with ChatGPT, especially if you say if people don't use their common sense. Yeah? Like if somebody struggles to write a decent system description of their product, which is some digital technology, I don't know, say an interlocking or something like that, and they basically start using ChatGPT to basically write the missing chapters of their system description or something like that. I could imagine that there are IP violations all over the place. And the thing really is that, as you said, it's a black box. Yeah, so information is not just given out by the system; it's also going into the system, and then it just disappears there and is used for whatever future purposes there are. Like if somebody else ever came up and said, I want to write a system description, and the system will think, well, I've got this one from Siemens over there, let's use this, and so on. So I guess it's as much as anything about awareness of people, that in the same way that you don't put your passwords on a piece of paper, or you don't write the PIN of your credit card on the back of your credit card, because that would be pretty stupid. You lose your card, you lost everything. In the same way that people have to think, okay, well, this is basically an open software that just can go anywhere and be used by anyone. I should just not put any professional information in there. And basically by having a policy like forbidding professional use in its entirety, it's probably the easiest way of just discouraging people of doing the wrong thing. By simply not allowing to use it in the first place. So well, it's definitely a very exciting topic. I could imagine that this is something that by now all over the place, that basically going across your entire product spectrum. So something that also needs to be built into the products in the first place. I mean, things like these demilitarized zones, obviously your entire system design needs to be in a way that facilitates this in the first place. This is nothing you can afford to basically plug onto the system in hindsight. So it basically has to be designed in right from the start, I would imagine.
Yep.
So, yeah. It's definitely a fascinating topic. How do you see, I mean, many people, when it comes to cybersecurity and like looking at it from a private perspective, like your own computer and bank account logins and the risk of it being hacked. So let the business aside, just having your private opinion as somebody who knows a lot about this stuff. My impression is that a lot of this cybersecurity thing is almost seen like a race between the hackers on the one side and the anti-hackers on the other side, which is the McAfees of the world. So people trying to protect computers. I don't know, Apple iOS coming with a new software version which has a few additional virus protection things built in and so on. How do you see this race developing? Will we be continuously safe in the future, provided that we just take care, like doing all the regular updates and making sure we do have an antivirus in the first place and so on? Or do you think that it's all but impossible to protect us or us as an individual for all eternity? Maybe I'm going to personalize it. If somebody is a specialist in the field like yourself, so how do you protect your own computer at home? And can you sleep well at night, being optimistic that your stuff will be protected against all kinds of threats that you know exist in the outside world, probably much more than I know, for example?
Well, I think the best response is to look at what is reasonable. So obviously you can invest a lot of money, even on your personal laptop at home, to have all the fancy software, the fancy settings and VPNs and whatnot to make it as secure as possible. Yes. However, I think for the average user who only uses your home laptop for online banking, social media and email, it's probably a little bit overkill. So there again, common sense, I guess, is the best approach. Just to keep if you're using Windows, to keep your Windows updated, use your Windows Defender, and then check if the antivirus updates or the internal checks for the antivirus are done on a regular basis. If you're receiving emails, just be smart and not click on any links, especially if it starts with "you've won." Just again, common sense. Passwords again for your emails and for your bank account. Just to use different passwords, secure passwords, change them regularly. I think for your personal life, those are the measures that you can do and easily do to reduce the risk of hacking, hijacking, whatever. But I mean, you can if you have, like, if you're self-employed and you're using your personal laptop for also your business topics, then it might be worthwhile having actually a professional look at it and implementing some other measures. That's something that would be useful, I guess, in that case. And obviously for me as a regular employee, I have my personal stuff at home and I have my work laptop. Work laptop is managed by a central IT system. It's regularly updated. So
that, to me, raises a very interesting question, and that's really a question of trust. The thing, and I think it's probably this spam culture that we have more and more at the moment, and also this phishing. I wouldn't call it a culture, but it's still it's a phenomenon which is happening more and more often, and the hackers or the phishers are getting more and more sophisticated. Like by now, they can basically emulate phone numbers from your bank, for example, so that it looks like even on your display, you've got the phone number of your bank in your contact details, so that basically if your bank calls you, it basically shows in your display your bank is calling and not just unknown number or something like that. So they can basically pretend that those calls would come from your real bank. And then they have all these kind of tricks to put you under psychological pressure, like, for example, pretending that they have already hacked your computer, and in order to somebody else hack the computer, obviously not the hacker themselves, but they are happy to help you out, and by doing that, they basically get in the first place. So, and this, to me personally, that raises the level of mistrust against pretty much anyone out there. To the point where, for example, I have a website which is in dire need of some kind of maintenance that I don't think I can do myself because I'm technologically challenged when it comes to website maintenance. I'm quite honest there. But giving this away to an external party, I struggle with, for the simple reason why I said, well, if I allow them to maintain my website, they need to get into the system first. So I need to give them some kind of login to get into the website, to do the changes that are required for maintaining the website and making sure everything works again. How can I be sure that they're not using this entry to plug some piece of software in that basically keeps the door open for all eternity and allows them to do some other stuff and basically hack my website, I don't know, 2 years later, 5 years later, whatever. How can you, I'm not quite sure if you get where I'm going with this, but how can you find someone who, for example, helps me protecting my business laptop of my small business entity, while making sure that very person doesn't prepare my laptop for future hacking attempts?
Yes, so there you probably first ask for credentials, right? So you would not just pick a random person from the corner of your street, just to make sure that person is actually accredited, has experience, has a certification. So there are audits that can be done for businesses, especially for IT businesses, to make sure that they conform to for example, the ISO 27700, which is IT or information security norm for businesses that just make sure that they do all the basics and follow procedures and are not a malicious entity. But yeah, trust is a big thing, of course. But there you would put, well, one good way to address that is to have multiple user accounts. So you would have your admin account, user accounts with different permissions, with different logins, just to basically spread the risk across different accounts in this case.
Yeah. And maybe also just having a temporary user login for the person maintaining the website, and then basically removing that login once the maintenance work is done. And then if you go back to them a year later, well, they just get a new login that you created beforehand. As you said, with reduced rights, so they wouldn't get the full admin rights. They basically just need to get the rights that they need to have in order to maintain the website. I mean, my personal favorite would actually be having somebody sitting besides me, or basically, like if I was to share my screen now, for example, if you were a web designer, what we could do, I could basically share my screen. I could log into my website now without you seeing the password. And then you could basically tell me where to go to fix stuff myself. Yeah, so it's almost like a guided website maintenance. It's certainly a slower process, but it would certainly be something where I would feel safer personally, because I don't need to give out login rights or passwords or so at all. Yeah, like I haven't tried it, whether that works, whether anybody would be prepared to do it like this. And it's certainly a bit of a cumbersome way, but for some generally mistrusting people like myself, and I wasn't always like this, it's literally just, if you see what's happening in the outside world, it becomes more and more difficult, I find, to be trusting to people. So maybe that's the solution. I don't know, but I think trust is a big thing, and I think trust becomes a cultural thing as well. Yeah, as almost a side effect of all this cybersecurity and phishing and what have you. Yeah, so you can't. You get a text from your bank, you can't trust anymore whether it really comes from your bank. You get a phone call or you get a text message from your child, and you can't trust that anymore because somebody could just play this hello mum thing that's currently going on, at least here in Australia, and so on. It's I don't know. I guess where I'm going with this is, can you maybe finish this off with something like positive or inspiring or something like that, where you say, well, guys, it's not that bad. Yeah, you don't have to give up hope in humanity just because there are a few people out there who are trying to do the bad things and in earning a living. Is there anything, or what gives you hope and optimism with knowing all that stuff and probably knowing much more about this than I do?
Well, with regards to what we can do, it's like I said, always use your common sense, especially if, as you mentioned, if you receive a phone call that you're not expecting from your bank or from your grandchild or whatever, just ask them, I'll call you back. And most of the time, if it actually like a phishing attempt, they will just hang up, right? Or never respond with like your name. Just say hello, because sometimes those will be recorded and then used somewhere else. But again, common sense. Implement the measures that are available to you. Especially with your smartphones nowadays, use your multi-factor authentication, use your biometric authentication, and I believe most of the time you should be good. It's only the case if you're like emotionally manipulated. Like I said, if you receive an email where you've won $1 million, and then you would be excited and just click on the link without thinking, that's where things go bad. But if you stay calm if you think before clicking, if you think before answering a question on the phone, it's all manageable for your personal life, right? And then for the railway world, again, there we have all these processes, all these procedures and standards in place. If everybody has that in mind, does the awareness training, if in doubt, speak to your PSSE, that's your product and solution security expert, just to ask for advice if you're not sure what to do. And for your actual system design, again, we have our best practices and designs in place that address all the challenges that we're facing and that the clients, the operators are facing. And because there's more awareness and because of this shift to digitalization, it is of more importance. 10 years ago, it was a different story. Now we're actually in a place where the operator, the maintainer, the commissioning technicians, the sub-project managers, everybody should be aware of the challenges that we're facing and just be mindful of sharing passwords, for example. And then things should be okay.
Using common sense is definitely something that I'm a big promoter of myself, so that's something I can certainly relate to. Plus, I just learned a new acronym, which is PSSE. I haven't heard that before.
Yes.
So there was definitely some learning effect in for me.
Yeah, and it's important to involve that person very early on in the project.
Okay, well, once you know what it means in the first place, and that you've got someone like this on your project, then that's certainly a very worthwhile recommendation. All right, well, being conscious of your time because it's early morning in Germany and you still need to go and put a full workday in. While I'm almost winding down, well, not quite, it's afternoon here, so I still have got some work to do in editing the episode and so on. I'd like to thank you very much for your advice, for your very, very open and at the end, optimistic viewpoints, which personally helped me a bit, and I hope some of the other listeners as well who may feel a bit disillusioned about the honesty of humanity or the honest intentions of some parts of humanity. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
And for our listeners, I hope you liked that episode as usual. If you liked it, then be sure that you share it with your friends. You tell others about this. As you can see, I keep striving to get more and more women in our industry on the podcast to kind of keep it balanced. I'm working pretty hard on that. I think 3 of the last 4 episodes was actually with female guests. I was a bit, should I make a big deal out of it? Because it should actually be quite natural that you have both men and women in the industry. That would be the ideal situation. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. But yeah, we keep working on it, and I hope by presenting people like Lena, who have done like glorious careers in the railway industry in some very interesting aspects of railways as well, very future-oriented aspects, very much state-of-the-art aspects. That also takes a bit of the prejudice away that railway is all about this old stuff like metal on metal wheel on metal rails and mechanical engineering, something like that. Interesting that you mentioned that you actually studied mechanical engineering and now developed into this top end IT computer-based kind of world. That's really interesting. All right, well, thanks very much for listening, everyone. And as usual, I'd like to finish the interview with my typical closure. Keep it simple and bye for now.
Hi, it's Doc Frank again, real quick before you head off. If you are a fan of communications-based train control or short CBTC, there's an event coming up in September that you absolutely don't want to miss. It's the first virtual global CBTC conference. It's called CBTC World Summit 2023, and it's happening on the 20th and the 21st of September. There will be 3 sessions of about 6 hours duration each for 3 different global regions, one for Asia Pacific, once for North and South America, and once for Europe and the Middle East. So wherever you are in the world, one of those sessions will be during the daytime in your time zone, and you can watch it live for the full 6 hours with 6 presentations. The kicker about this is that all other presentations, including the ones from your own session, will be available for replay via recordings. So that means that if the other session should be in the middle of your night, you can still watch it on demand at a time that's more convenient for you and doesn't interfere with your good night's sleep. The conference is available for registration right now at my training portal under docfranktraining.podia.com/summit23. I repeat that, docfranktraining.podia.com/summit23. I'm putting a lot of effort into this conference. It will be an absolute blockbuster event, and I very much hope to see you there. Until then, keep it simple and bye for now. Hey, Doc Frank here, host of the Rebel Conversations podcast. Thank you for listening.